of a 1 hour, of a multiple weeks. So we need to do adjustments according to period, so that as the users get adjusted to the algorithm as well, the features keeps on improving. So we need to take variations periodically for that. And then the third thing is, how do we improve the operation? So first you created some kind of features, you apply feature extraction, you apply feature translation, you try to find out some features which can exactly represent your commands. But this exactness doesn't come immediately. Okay, so we need to modify our algorithm in such a way that the accuracy keeps on improving. So that is known as your adaptive capabilities of the algorithm. So feature translation essentially is classification steps which can classify the signal features according to the device commands which you are using an output device. The fourth thing is the output device. Output device is any device in which the feature translation converts the signals into. So if you see, there are different output devices possible. So it can be a word processing, means we the brain of the person wants to select, or the person who cannot move, who has a stroke or paralysis, wants to select a particular word, or wants to write some SMS to his relatives. So how can he do that? So there are word processing algorithms or the output devices which the users can be trained on to do the word processing task. Then there is automatic movement of vehicle. If you can see this first image, the person is wearing an EEG cap and looking into the screen so that he or she can convert his signals into his wheelchair movement. Then virtual reality, you have already seen the movement of the cars with the help of virtual reality. Then augmented reality is another application which you can utilize in this area. So there are certain applications which I have not mentioned here, but they exist, like the one the Facebook is using. So output device can be anything for which the brain is thinking about to perform a certain action on. Okay, so this is all about the output device. Then comes the operating protocol. Okay, so there was 4 components. First is signal acquisition, second is the signal processing, third is the output device. The operating protocol is some kind of rule which control the operation of the whole BCI. So when to turn on and off this BCI device, how do we establish communication? It should be continuous or discontinuous. It should be user initiated or system initiated. So whatever type, whatever basic functionalities that should be required in a BCI device are operated under this operating protocol. So again, this BCI is divided into 3 more categories according to the basis of control signals used. So first one is the P300 evoked potential based BCIs, in which if you see, you can see 2 screens consisting of the alphabets and digits. And what is happening here is, when this screen is visible to the user, the particular letter is selected as the intersection of the row or the column which is visible on these 2 screens. For example, a word processing technique, a person want to select a letter K. Okay, so whenever the cursor blinks on these illuminating rows or columns, there is a certain peak is generated inside the brain, which is captured by the BCI device so that the particular letter K be selected. So P30 evoked potential is whenever we are represented with the help of a stimuli, a particular signal is generated inside the brain. Second is a visually evoked potential based BCI. So in this, what happens? We are viewed a particular stimulus for a steady amount of time so that we can allow a person to control the cursor with the help of gaze. So whenever the person is gazing on a particular cursor, if he wants to move that cursor to left or right or up and down, so by use of the gaze power of the brain or of the eyes, it can shift the cursor in such a way that the person is able to move. So that is the basis of visually evoked potential. The third one, and the area in which I am working, is sensory motor rhythm based BCIs, or that is also known as motor imagery BCI. It does work on this principle that whenever you want to perform your left hand action, your right brain is active, and whenever you want to perform your right hand action, your left brain is active. So using those kind of rhythms, we can again derive a EEG device or a BCI device, which can help in moving the wheelchair in left or right direction, or in helping your hand move a particular thing without having power in that hand. Okay, so this is known as sensory motor rhythm based BCI. So these are actually oscillations and in the electric or magnetic fields recorded over sensory motor cortex, okay, by the help of EEG. So as we have already seen, there are certain bands within EEG. This particular type of rhythms fall in mu, beta and gamma activity of the EEG. Okay, so this is based on the concept that either you execute a particular movement of the limb, or you just think about that movement. Okay, then same kind of rhythms are generated. Okay, so those people who have paralysis or stroke, those who can't move their hands, but they can think about or they can imagine about moving their hand, the same type of signals generate inside the brain. These are known as sensory motor rhythms or motor imagery signals. Okay, so the BCIs based on these rhythms are known as sensory motor rhythms based BCIs. So they have two kinds of signals known as event related desynchronization and synchronization. Event related desynchronization happens जब आप whenever you execute a particular hand movement or leg movement, or you imagine about that movement, the certain brain activity in the mu and beta range decreases. So this is known as event related desynchronization. And just after performing that movement, there is a certain increase in that rhythmic activity, which is known as event related synchronization. So here is a representation of how a person is trying to move the cursor on the screen with the help of this EEG device. So you can see a person is wearing a headgear with the having certain number of electrodes, and then you can see the representation which the computer understand. Okay, so this representation is again you can see a particular graph here which shows a particular activity over a certain number of electrodes. So you see C4, CZ and C3 at the back. So if there is a certain kind of activity as this C3 and C4 electrode, we can see. So if there is a peak at C3, that means your right brain is active, means you want to move the cursor to the right. And if there is a peak at C4, then you want to move your cursor to the left. So this kind of interaction between the computer and the brain goes with the help of some software, signal processing software, so that we can get something from the signals and we can convert those signals into some device commands. So that is the actual actual meaning of this brain computer interaction. So I'll ask ma'am how much time is there.
We have 5 minutes. We can take 5 minutes.
Okay, so why do I choose this particular area? Because this motor imagery does not require any stimulus, means we does not require any kind of stimuli like a gaze activity or a particular signal or particular screen viewing for generating signals. So the brain can generate these signals just by imagination. So just people need to be accustomed to these kinds of signals for generating different signals of motor imagery. So, and it is useful for people which have sense disorder as well, so that they can't see. A blind person can also generate motor imagery activity. Or other kind of disorder, auditory disorder or any kind of muscular disorder, they can also generate motor imagery signals. So that's why I choose this particular area. And this can be controlled by self-regulation. As soon as you stop thinking about that, the device can be stopped by the regular conversion of that signal into the device command. Again, if you have damaged motor function, or if your hand or leg movement is damaged, then you can use this motor imagery in the recovery of that as well. So okay, so there are some challenges in this motor imagery BCI as well. Because we are capturing the EEG data from the scalp, there are noise, artifacts, and other background activities which can be captured during the signal acquisition and may contaminate the data. Then again, whenever you acquire signal from the brain, that is not the actual signal which you are taking from a particular neuron. No, it is a superimposition of different signals coming from different areas of the brain. So while coming from the brain tissue to the brain scalp, there is certain smearing and distortion of the signals during recording. Okay, and then again, as I told, it is a superimposition of the signal. So what the main signal might be lost in the superimposed signal, because the activity which you want to do or you want to perform has been there in that particular signal, but it is hidden because the other signals are amplified as compared to the activity which you wanted to record. Again, signal to noise ratio is a challenging issue in this. And further, these EEG signals are time variant and highly non-stationary. They changes over time, they changes over certain sessions. So these are highly non-stationary signals. So this is all about the motor imagery. And there are certain feature extraction techniques in BCI, which I think we'll not discuss. So you just see the slide. So there are different techniques like temporal techniques, spectral techniques, and spatial techniques. So here I would like to end this presentation, so as we have a certain limit of the time. Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Jyoti, for this very informative talk. Really, this is a very good topic. And many our students also, students of GST SIMS, they are attending this, so they can interact and start working on this. Okay, so in this session, although we had 2 talks, but one of the speaker he's having, I think, some problem, personal problem. Because of that, he is not able to join us. So we are moving to the last session of this webinar. So Jyoti, please start that session. Okay, ma'am. Now please unmute yourself. You have rights, so you can start your presentation.
Hello, ma'am. Welcome to this webinar on artificial intelligence, data science, and its application. So I would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Meeta Prakash. So she is a PhD from IIT BHU itself in computer science and engineering. She has more than 20 years of experience in research and development, teaching in software industry. Her interest areas are in software engineering and emerging technologies. She has also worked across diverse global teams with Oracle, Infosys, and currently she works as a senior manager at Infosys Limited, Bangalore, with specialization in retail, CPG, logistics, ERP, and automation. She is an active and recognized member of the international testing community. It parts of the international conference forums such as speaker in advisory boards and special jury team members as well. She is also a part of the International Association of the Software Testing Forum, in which personal capacity and provide constant support back to the testing community by being a volunteer trainer for various AST courses. She also co-edits an e-zine on software testing called Tea Time with Testers. She has been part of the review team of the Domain Testing Workbook, a book published by Professor Kim Kanner et al. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us and in accepting this invitation. Please start your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. Am I clearly audible to everybody?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So it's really a pleasure to be connected here and be talking to all of you. So let me first connect on the presentation and then I can get started. Give me a second. Right. So is my screen visible? Jyoti, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So as this has been an interesting session since morning. I've attended all the talks that have been happening here. And I thought as a perspective, I would probably bring across what we do in software industry as implementation. So what I talked through throughout this session would not be too much of academia stuff, but more towards how industry uses the aspects of artificial intelligence, data sciences, and also towards the end of it, just because Manjari told me that there are a lot of students also attending this, I would like to bring across a couple of slides which can probably help students understand what are the areas that they can focus more on and which is most happening kind of thing in the industry and gives them ample job opportunities. So anywhere, Manjari and Jyoti, if you feel a disconnect, let me know. We can always cut short and move ahead. Also, any questions, you can pop it up on the chat and we can take it up later, or while I'm speaking, I would pick them up. The other request would be while I'm going through the slides, though you see my number of slides are huge, but then most of them I have already pushed it out to appendix. So I would try to ensure that I confine myself to about 20-30 minutes at the most. And what you would see across the slides is more of the ideation, which you've already gone through in the morning. I would just very briefly cover up, go into AI aspect of things, and then we would look at the rest of it. So let me just switch over to the presentation mode. So it's 2:20 that we start at. Okay. So we've been hearing a lot about AI all over, especially since the pandemic has hit us. So broadly, when we talk about the industrial aspect of it, we classify it into the 4 categories. One where we say it's purely reactive. So, typically, say for example, your car meets an accident. So you hit someone. So your first reaction is, did I do a mistake or was it another mistake? Typical to a 1RC culture, the mistake is always others. Coming back to limited memory, you do not know the complete population space where your problem area is coming into. So you may know a limited aspect of it. Like say, for example, if we pick up what Jyoti presented, so she's talking about certain nodes, when she's talking about certain actions, it is only pertaining to that particular part of the neural networks which are getting stimulated in the brain. So if she's trying to move a pointer from point A to B, it's just about moving that pointer to point A to B. It's not about lifting that pointer and replacing it into another room. So that is what we basically go back and classify as a limited memory. Then you have something called theory of mind. So it has capacity to understand what is the thought process behind it. So the actions will be accordingly taken care of. The fourth aspect is self-aware, that there is already an information about it. You know what has to be done, you know how it has to be done, and it gets done. So the next thing, the concept of artificial intelligence, as in the morning also we went through a number of sessions. It started somewhere in 1950s where it became very, very prominent and people started working more towards it, trying to understand how this can be used. From where on it moved on with the advent of time in 80s, people understood that no, there's something else called machine learning which has to come into it. From where on in about 2010 and all, people moved ahead to the thought process of the deep learning, where people understood that the data is not only about what actions have happened or what is there. There is always a legacy which gets carried on, and it is from there on which has gone ahead and built on. In today's date, if we look at where exactly industry is standing, if artificial intelligence is your population space, your machine learning and deep learning are the areas where the industry is totally focusing on and working ahead for providing solutions into the various domains, various aspects which impact our day-to-day life. This is just another representation of the same. So while it is branching out, these are the various kind of fields. There was a time when AI was directly related only to robotics. I know when we were still in college, we were studying, this was in late 90s. Our predominant area of work that was happening around AI was where people were thinking about robotics. So anybody who thought about robotics, Japan was a key country that people were thinking about. Oh, they have robots. Oh, they are doing work into this field. They can automate stuff and all. But over a period of time, this has not been confined to robotics. This has moved to speech. It is extremely helpful for people with disabilities. It is being very, very extensively used. There are neural network which are being explored, and things like what work Jyoti presented and all, getting into that kind of category where human limitations of physical abilities. You would have seen there are a lot of disabled runners who have a leg amputated and they are replaced with something called a blade. And that blade helps them even run as fast as a natural person who has both the legs would be able to run. So those kind of things are getting very, very highly explored under neural networks. There are also things which are happening in natural language processing, the cognitive computing, the expert systems that are being built, the vision systems that are being built. But machine learning and big data are the stuff which have become absolutely key areas where right now a lot of work is happening in the industry. As we explore further, I'm not spending more time here because as we explore further, we will be talking about all of these. This was just a slide to get you accustomed to the terminologies and the high level of areas that we guys keep working on. Just want to introduce you to another philosophy and concept about what all are the things that you need to get into, or the kind of work that broadly gets classified while we are dealing with it in artificial intelligence. So your planning becomes very key activity here. You just cannot randomly get up, go and say, oh, I'm going to push this into artificial intelligence. No. So if you pick up an activity, you have to focus about. This was very extensively covered by the professor who spoke in the morning. I think Professor Verma, who comes from Allahabad. So he had a lot of these diagrams where he went back and explained how various permutations and combinations of various activities can be picked up. But then if you're not planned enough, if you do not know your constraints, if you do not know your population space, it is very, very difficult to have a finite kind of a solution that you provide. And starting from planning, then the whole stuff moves into an order where you have to go back and figure out what is the logic, what is the reasoning. When you say uncertain reasoning, basically we are talking about the kind of constraints that the system might encounter while you're automating it. You have your meta reasoning and control rationality, cognitive science. These are all very English words and pretty self-explanatory. There is hardly anything that goes beyond what they actually mean into the world of artificial sciences also. So at the most, again, a very, very key stuff which happens here is machine learning and data mining in today's world. And then based on this, your decision making. So now I'll give you a very, very small example from your day-to-day life. I am sure each one of you has been doing a lot of online shopping, especially after pandemic. And you would have noticed that while you use your social media, you would have gone back and ordered, say, for example, a bed sheet of Amazon. And suddenly you will find your Facebook is flooded with ads of other online providers who sell such kind of things, which might be your Snapdeal, your Flipkart, your even JioMart now, and you will suddenly have a lot of them whose ads will start popping up on your timeline. So all these are what the machine learning and data mining is in today's day using, and it is getting into our day-to-day life. Another slide that I would like you to probably relate to. I think I'm not sure if that's so very clear. So I will be using this again at the point of when I present about data mining and all. So I'll just roughly read this out and then we will cover this in detail again later. So where all in today's date, we are seeing the kinds of AI applications happening across various industries. So we are seeing it very actively into policies and governance, into your healthcare, into your media, into your aerospace, the law, communication, education, your agriculture, transport, banking and finance, and your defense also. So we'll cover all this again in detail into further thing. This is just a slide to introduce you to the concept. Three other important things that I would like to introduce at this stage is when we are talking about how AI moves. There are three concepts which are generally in the terminology which we call as ANI, AGI, and ASI. Basically, how you are narrowing down on your intelligence, how you are gathering the general information about it, and how are you using it as a super intelligence parameter. While we have been doing all this, there have been certain key challenges, and how AI has provided a solution to it is what basically I've covered in this slide. So the three parameters which are about uncertainty, complexity, and equivocal. When you're looking at any aspect with the artificial intelligence concept are the three key challenges which we face. Now, all three of them together can lead to a system failure if you're trying to go ahead and build it over the AI frameworks. So when you're talking about uncertainty, we have brought in certain systems which provide us real-time information. So because of that, the anomaly detection into data is much quicker, and it helps us go back and write off this uncertainty, or at least have a predictability parameter to it. The second one is about complexity. So for this, your data collection, the data mining, the data analysis become very critical. And if you have done it exhaustively is not possible in this world. But then if you've done it decently enough and you've kind of done an extrapolation on your population appropriately, this is again a parameter where you can go back and say your confidence level is high. Currently, the biggest problem which I can relate to this is our COVID vaccine, which is still under study. So where most of us have a dual mind: have they done sufficiently enough, and should we go back and take a vaccine tomorrow if it is available? The third one is equivocality. So do we have the exact sentiments, and does it represent the diversity which exists? So if one person says yes and the other person says no, then is it something where you can go back and take an intelligent decision? This is again coming back to how these design solutions, which are multidisciplinary in approach, when you're working with AI frameworks, what do they result in ultimately? So you go back, you need to understand what that framework is needed for. What is your key design challenge? Are you going back and thinking solution instead of, software? The key impact in this aspect for industry is, unlike academia and research, where a failure of an experiment is also a learning and a positive attribute, for an industry it is not. If anything which you're working on does not ultimately generate revenue for the company, it is an absolute failure and it's not worth it. The company definitely does not want to invest any kind of money into such kind of activities. Also knowing how to leverage across discipline. Now, this has become again a very, very key aspect in last few years, where open systems in the software world have become a very popular feature. In today's date, if you want to write a code, there's so many channels available where you can just go and pick up stuff. Your tools are on open source. Your even programming languages are on open source now. So unless and until you know when you're creating one, how can you leverage it? It becomes huge expense in today's date. Then also learning how to assemble and ensure that what are your outcomes are cognitive in their approach, and then the comprehension of human-computer interface. This again, the last one, you can relate to what Jyoti was presenting right now. So when you're saying that there's a human-computer interface, how does it actually go about? All this ultimately leads out to the roles of the data science. So data science over a period of time, it was always there. It was not that it was not there. But then slowly people started realizing, and this was about post 2010, is when industry started to take more recognition of it, because the system started moving very fast. There were outdated systems like COBOL and Pascal coded ones, which became a heavy legacy for huge big companies as they moved ahead on newer technologies, which gave them more ROIs. ROI basically is a term that industry uses very extensively, and we're using it quite a bit throughout the presentation, which is return on investments. So everybody looks for what is your profit value at the end of it. So that was where things like Internet of Things started gaining more popularity. Your big data started gaining more popularity. And slowly, as the data increased, your storage volumes increased in exponential. People started looking for more flexible sort of data storage, which was available on the go, as well as they were more secure. Plus, they had large volume storage, and everything was available at one go. So while you look at your physical storage devices, you had multiple limitations, like your disks would crash out, your backups may not be available end to end. You would have a limitation. You can't put things for unlimited volume in a space, and all that was what led to more popularity of cloud. Along with that, your mobility, which started increasing, your smartphones, other smart devices started increasing, and this whole technology had a paradigm shift, and where the role of data science started getting recognized absolutely separately, and slowly the industry started moving towards it. It was something which started with an outcome. So as your data volumes increased, as your analytics increased, as your structured, unstructured, internal, external, all these kind of methods of storage integration increased. These were again explained very well in the morning, the first two sessions of the morning. So I'm not going to revisit them again. And then how our new emerging technology stacks made it scalable, distributed, and moving towards the various kind of architectures that existed across on a particular software. The complete footprint of the software from end to end, if you look at from where it would have started for that company way back in 1950s and all to something we're talking about in today's days. This is just a representation of that. The four key stages of the approach when it came to data science and analytics were all focused towards your problem definition, your problem formulation, your engineering solutions which were provided across the various descriptive parameters, and how you ultimately took it to the market. So, and taking anything to the market does not mean that you are just taking it to the market. When you take it to the market, you need to sustain it, and you also need to maintain it. So a package, when you create a package and you market it, you just don't throw it as a one-off use. When you take it to the market, it is supposed to have a certain life period where it will be used from X amount to X amount of time, and beyond that, there would either be new release. It's something as similar as your new phones which keep coming on. You keep having a new release of your softwares. You keep having new release of your OS system. So you say, for example, if I'm using an Apple phone in today's date, I'm talking about an Apple 12, right? An iPhone 12. iPhone 12 has the features versus the initial iPhone to the features that you look at an iPhone 12. They look at even the minutest of the things, which is as bad as the phone falling and a screen cracking. An iPhone screen cracking means it's as good as replacing your phone, with a just one version below that. And the latest feature with iPhone 12, they've enabled it that it's waterproof also, and the screen is secure and crack proof. So such kind of things is something that you need to look into, the sustainability when you are looking at any kind of data-driven interpretations and analytics. And analytics has become a very, very important feature. In fact, almost all the companies have a separate vertical now which supports into data analytics across industry. And the main thing that we look into is not only about analyzing their past data and legacy data, but also about predictive analysis that we can bring about in various fields. I'll talk about more details into it in one of the subsequent slides. Now, as IoT and data sciences started becoming popular, so this was the kind of predictions that industry threw on our face just 2 years back. Who can imagine that just 2 years down the line, where I still feel that blockchain is happening thing. It just came yesterday. IoT came just yesterday. But in today's date, I am looking at things which are much, much beyond this, because the key driver is this aspect which says smart devices exist everywhere. So everybody wants everything on the fingertip. Everybody wants all the information on your thumb. So India still doesn't have a lot of automated house aspects, but then US has a lot of it. Still, most of you would have, at least if you don't own one, you would have seen the ads on the TV and all about Alexa. So Alexa basically controls most of the households. In fact, some time back, about a year back, there was a very, very funny video which was going around on WhatsApp for quite some time, which was about a person having the whole house automated, and he steps out in the day and goes for a dental treatment. And when he comes back, his mouth is all swollen, and he had a speech recognition system on his automated voice, which the whole system is controlled in his house by his voice. And the guy, the automated system did not even open the door for him. The guy had to just stand out and wait and ultimately check into a hotel because his house did not allow him an entry and because his speech was slurred due to the swelling that he had in his mouth. It was a very, very funny video. So probably I can share it some other time with all of you. So let's talk about a little more about the domains that rule us in today's date. And this is an advent kind of thing which has really grown in vertical within last 1 year. So not that the things were not there, but then thanks to pandemic and the restrictions being there where people could not move, the people were constrained at one place, and there were various other kinds of restrictions which have moved things across almost all the domains. And these are the predominant domains where we see the maximum business being generated across the industry. So your banking today, whether it is your asset pricing, trading strategies, or your general banking, everything is on your phones now. Your healthcare, your pharmaceuticals. So if you want to order your medicine, your MediPlus, your 1mg, the n number of people out there where you just upload your prescriptions, medical prescriptions, and the medicines are dispatched to your house. You don't have to worry about what it is. If you are a regular medicine taker, say for example, you are a diabetic or a hypertensive, you will need a medication regularly. So there are also about 6 months duration or something in which you need to go back and upload the next prescription. Till then, you can order those particular set of medications regularly without having to break your head. The climate change, the public policy. In fact, this is one thing which if you guys have been following the pandemic closely, you would have seen Government of India is using this very, very actively now. When it comes about the cyclone management or during the pandemic, the sessions that the Home Ministry and your Health Ministry and all have been having, the press conferences, they go back and release the information on this. They have been using this pretty extensively. Your oil and gas, your web industry, your internet security. This is another aspect which is really, really gain importance because everything moving onto the cloud, this has moved to another paradigm for which we can probably have another session because it's a humongous kind of a thing which is moved. Your transportation. So like in Bangalore kind of a city, which is much bigger city, we have so many small runner companies which have come up. So runner companies, when I say what it means, say, for example, I need to reach something from BHU to Gadolia. So in a city like Varanasi, still, I would pick up my vehicle and go to Gadolia and drop it, or go to Gadolia and pick it if I have to come back to BHU. But in Bangalore kind of city, what we do, we Dunzo. I'm just talking about one of the providers. So Dunzo is one of the providers. So you just raise your request, they'll have a minimum charge for it. And you won't believe the charges are as minimum as